Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, this is a short summary on the most important rulings of zakat that every Muslim should know, because we always, either if we don't have to give zakat, somebody else, a family friend, zakat might be fard upon them and they might not realize that it is fard upon them. So this is a summary of the main Masail of several videos and my own reading. Alhamdulillah, that I put together. In the description I put more detailed videos that you can go to on YouTube. Shaykh Tahir Anwar from US, Shaykh Mufti Rahman Yusuf from the UK, Maulana Uzayr from Brisbane, Australia. Their videos are quite detailed, more thorough. I've given a summary of their Masail and some other points as well. So what does zakat mean? Zakat means to purify, because by giving zakat it purifies our wealth, it makes our whole wealth halal for us, and also it is a means of purifying our heart from greed and attachment to worldly and material possessions. Upon whom is zakat compulsory? Zakat is compulsory on every sane adult Muslim possessing nisab. In the fiqh al-Hanafi, an insane person and a child does not have to pay zakat. In other schools of fiqh, they also have to pay zakat. Zakat is due upon a Muslim, and it's also due upon someone who possesses nisab. Nisab is the minimum threshold that you need to possess at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year. And if it dips in the middle of the year, that's fine. But at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year, if you're over that, the year starts at the beginning of the year when you reach the threshold. The nisab is calculated by in dollars. At the moment in Australian dollars, 600 from 612 grams of silver, you get about $450 to $500. The price does fluctuate daily. So let's say we round it up to $500, so it's easy to remember. So that $500 is the threshold. Once you cross that, in your savings, minus your debts, your saving is 500, your zakat year starts. You have to take a note of that, because that's your zakat year. As long as you're making money and earning and you're having savings, that'll be your zakat year. So let's say, just for argument's sake, it's 15th of Rajab, right? About a month and a half before Ramadan. Ramadan it's not compulsory to give zakat, or zakat is only Ramadan. It's based on when that year starts. The next year, when you reach the 15th, so 1 year has passed. After 1 year, you still have an amount over that at $500 amount, or the nisab amount. Whatever that amount is there in your savings, minus debt, your savings minus debts, and you're over the nisab amount, however much it is, the total of your wealth, and we'll look at that in a moment, is 2.5% of that wealth is given in zakat to deserving recipients. When does the zakat year start? Well, for most people, it's usually after their first pay packet, when they start work, or when they receive a gift as a child, or as an adult even, I guess, or they, some cases when a person gets married, a lady usually doesn't have much possession, traditionally didn't have her own wealth, and she comes in possession with wealth and gold and so forth. Her year would start then, or an inheritance comes into possession. So different ways, but generally for most of us, it'll be when we do our first job, and we cross that threshold. That date has to be noted. That will generally be the person's zakat year for the rest of their life. You can give the zakat in advance in Ramadan, for example. So let's say your zakat year is 2 months after Ramadan. You can give it in advance. You have to calculate it, and hopefully you're over that. And if there's discrepancy, you give the difference at the time of the year when you reach the year. If you're given less than what is due upon you. Upon what sort of wealth is zakat given? So zakat, we calculate, there's many things to give zakat, and there's livestock and farm, which doesn't apply to most of us. What applies to us is gold and silver. In fiqh al-Hanafi, gold and silver, regardless of its personal use or not, zakat is given on that. That's part of your zakatable assets. In other schools of fiqh, like Hanbali and Shafi, personal jewelry, gold or silver, there's no zakat on that. So gold and silver, cash, whether it be in the bank or a safe or a wallet, stocks and shares, merchandise, things that you've bought to resell, or business inventory, that's another name for it. Zakat is given on voluntary superannuation retirement fund payments, or salary sacrifices it's called. Zakat that's added to your annual zakatable assets, right, at the end of the year. But super, that is, according to my teachers, money that is in superannuation or retirement funds, there is no zakat on that. The compulsory one, the government forces you to put into a fund, which your employer takes out and puts it into a super fund, the compulsory part of it, there's no zakat on it. However, They also said, my teacher said, that it is commendable if zakat is given every year. That's added to the zakatable wealth. And there are many ulama, the ulama differ on that, whether it's done or not. The ones that do say that you have to give it, that you have to give every year, because it's not like a normal debt. It's a money that's invested, you're making money off it. But however, the ones that say you don't have to give it, they still say it's commendable and should be done every year, should be added to your zakatable assets. So now we have all these assets, all these pool. At the end of the year, all of these things are added. Whatever debts that you have, they're subtracted. The difference, 2.5%. The end of the year, of course, is according to the Hijri calendar or the lunar year. What type of wealth is excluded from zakatable assets? So personal belongings, houses, cars, watches, things that you're going to use, regardless of how many they are, if they're there for personal use, you're excused from them. Rental properties. If you bought a property to rent out so you can make income from that, there is no zakat at it. If you buy properties specifically with a purpose and intention of selling it, and some people engage in that business and they have many properties and they have so much wealth, that's zakat. That zakat has to be given on that every year. Also, precious stones, so precious like diamonds and rubies, there is no zakat on that. So these things are excluded from zakat. So how do you factor debts? If you have lent out money to somebody, right? If it's a good debt and you know that it's going to be paid to you, then zakat is given every year that money is loaned out. Let's say $1,000 had been loaned out. That $1,000 this year, next year, the year after, if it's a 3-year loan, let's say, you have to give zakat every year. You can give it every year, or you wait the 3 years at the end and you give all 3 years in one go. But the ulama say it's better to give it every year so you don't get caught out and you have a larger amount to give after 3 years and you might not be able to do so. How is zakat calculated for debts? Debts that are owing to others, including mortgage. So normal debts understandable, but a mortgage debt, we're not talking about the halal and haram of a mortgage. We're talking about that it's a large amount of debt that's to be paid over an extended period of time. And people who go into those sort of arrangements, they still buy cars, they pay for all of the expenses, they're in debt, they go on holidays and so forth. What the ulama said, this type of debt is excluded. Each year, because zakat is on a yearly cycle, on the lunar month, the Hijri calendar, zakat is calculated, the debt of that large debt, only 1 year portion is taken. So for the next 12 months, whatever is due of that debt, when the nisab year comes, only the 12 months that is due of that debt that's coming, let's say it's $20,000, you have, for example, you have $30,000 saving. You have a $2,000 debt somewhere else, right? And you have a $20,000 mortgage debt. So your total debts are $22,000. You take the 20, you might owe $400,000 in total in your debt, but you only take the $22,000, subtract it from the $30,000 savings that you have in total of your zakatable assets, as we mentioned earlier, and then the difference, which is $8,000, zakat is done on that. 2.5% zakat is given off that. Who can you give zakat to? Zakat is given to the poor. Zakat cannot be given to institutions for buildings and paying bills and so forth. Zakat is given, it's the poor people have to be made the owners of the wealth. Now, some organization will make an arrangement with the poor and they'll sign off that there's zakat money we received. However, the better way to do is to actually directly make them the owners. Zakat money cannot be used for masjids, for madrasas, for anything else, construction and so forth. Zakat is used to fulfill the needs of the poor Muslims, faqir, miskin, these are different words, people in debt and so forth. This is a haqq of those masakin and poor people, and they have to be. There are other categories as well, but these are the main categories. Where should zakat be spent? Should it be spent locally, overseas? Historically, zakat, and in what the books mention, it should be spent in your area. However, as we are aware of what's happening in other parts of the world and the extreme needs of the Muslim on the other side of the world, what I suggest to the brothers and sisters in our masjid, split your zakat. There's some brothers with large amounts of zakat. Look for the needs of your local community and also spend overseas. The needs sometimes in refugee camps and in extreme situations in third world countries or so-called third world countries is much more than what we have in Australia. Therefore, what I advise is look for the local needs, because they have a haqq on us, our local brothers and our own community connected to our masjids and so forth. They have a right upon us. So we have to look out for their needs as well. So you can split your zakat. You don't have to spend your zakat in one place. You can spend it on multiple people, or many people can spend it on one person to fulfill the needs. And you can spend it on all those categories. You can spend it on orphans and widows and so forth, on faqirs and miskin and people in debt and so forth. But my advice would be to do not neglect the local needs of the Muslim. There are homeless people, there are Muslims sleeping in cars, there are Muslims going through hardship, businesses have failed, especially in the last few months. They should not be neglected. We should have a look out for both, inshallah. Who is responsible for the zakat? Zakat is the responsibility of the owner of the asset. So if a husband pays for the wife happily, it's fine. But if he refuses, he cannot be coerced. She might have to sell her gold or her asset or save up some money to pay the zakat that is due upon her. She cannot coerce her husband to pay her zakat. But generally, it is known that, especially in certain cultures, the husband pays zakat, checks and makes sure measures, and it's a family, things done together, and zakat is paid. But he cannot be coerced or compelled to do that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding and tawfiq to practice what we say in here. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.